It's been one of those weeks. Not really. It's been a very unusual week. I almost interrupted for special praise and testimony because I was driving home from work Thursday, and 465 on the south gets a little bit scary because you've got 2 of the 3 lanes are filled with trucks because they've got to go around the south end to get from one part of 70 to the other, or they've got to go south on 65 and they've got to go that way. So they're busy, and then the 3rd lane, the so-called fast lane, was not moving very fast, and I was driving along, and I don't know what distracted me, and all of a sudden I realized I'm about to hit that car in front of me. Do you ever have one of those sinking feelings like, ah? But I had a real quick prayer, Lord, don't let me cause these people in front of me hurt because of my misconduct. And I had hit the brake, and all of a sudden I was skewing to the right. When I stopped, my front bumper was about 2 foot alongside of their car, alongside of, not into. And a truck driver who was behind saw what was going to happen, and he had slowed down. I had plenty of room then to pull over in the next lane and keep going once I had stopped. And I was thinking, oh, that was nice. That was wonderful. As we go through life, there are things that come back. And I remembered then, at one point, I was driving along up near Cicero, and I saw this crazy woman pull out right in front of a truck. And I'm in the right lane. I just hit my brake. Truck's in the left lane. And he was observant enough to know that I was stopping, and he just swung over into my lane and avoided killing her. So there are things in this world that happen that just unbelievable. I ran into a new neighbor, and he was having a garage sale. And a curiosity, I went up to see what he was selling, why he was selling. Sometimes the why was the big issue. He had moved into the house. It was downsizing. He had probably had a house twice the size. It was downsizing because his wife, who was an RN, had been killed as she walked across the street to get something for a patient that wanted something. She was going the extra mile, and as she's crossing the street, somebody killed her. And so I had a nice visit with him. But the world is in trouble. There's lots of things in this world that are in evidence of trouble. And we'll get into that a little bit more as we go through. Question I'd ask you this morning, do you have a treasure? Do you have a treasure map? Do you dream of finding money in a storage unit? Do you go out and buy storage units so you can see what's in it? Those people are the true blue gamblers. I mean, they will buy a storage unit not knowing what's in it. And I will guarantee you that 95% of the time they spend too much money. There's a lot of people that lose money. Now, there are a few people that make money. I don't know how. I saw one where there's like a vacuum cleaner and a travel bag, the kind that on wheels, has a handle, and a little bit of junk. Some guy paid $35 for that, contents. Guy starts going through the bag, and there's junk in the bag. But then in another compartment in the bag, there's an envelope with 15 $100 bills. Why do people leave things like that in a locker? Confusion, mental instability, whatever. It's a good place to hide it until the owner died or forgot where it was. Do you dream of somebody leaving you a Philippe Patek watch and you take it into American Roadshow and you find out, oh, it's like solid gold and it's worth $250,000. Nice. Do you walk along the street and you see this painting and it's kind of weird, and you don't like modern art, but you think something tells me, pick it up and guess what? It's worth $1 million. What did our text tell us? It said, do not gather and heap up and store up for yourselves treasures on earth, where moth and rust and worms consume and destroy, and where thieves break through and steal. Now, we don't worry too much about moths anymore. Why don't we worry about moths as much? Okay. Number one, we wear synthetic fabrics. Moths don't like synthetic fabrics. Number two, there aren't as many opportunities for moths to, develop from eggs in our homes. It talks about rust, things rusting. Well, that's no problem. I'll just get gold. Gold doesn't rust, but the Bible says gold rusts. Did you know that? The Bible says that gold will rust. One researcher suggests that the professed followers of Christ take in 68% of the world's income. Now this is pre-China. I don't think you could say it's 68% now, but at least 50, 68% of the world's income, and 3% goes to the church. 3%. I know when I became an Adventist, I was used to Baptists, and Baptists are not high on the list of giving. Matthew 6:21 tells us, where your treasure is, there will your heart be also. There's another expression that I have heard years ago was, put your money where your mouth is, okay? In other words, what are you telling somebody when you say, put your money where your mouth is? Put up or shut up. Yeah, if you believe in it, why aren't you doing something about it? Okay? When I was in college, when I was going back to school after I became an Adventist and I was taking theology classes, and I got in an argument with the instructor about if there was a difference between if you love me, keep my commandments, and keep my commandments if you love me. Two different ways to translate the same verse. And I thought, no, right? I went back to the people I was staying with and looked at his commentary, and yeah, guess what? It gave both viewpoints in the commentary. Mine was listed first. I went back the next time, class session, what about such and such? Oh, that's old. That commentary's old. We're past that. I thought, I'd go to the chairman of the department, but he is the chairman of the department. A lot of help. But where your treasure is, there will your heart be also. Now, if your heart goes somewhere, where does your treasure should go? It should go where your heart is, shouldn't it? If you really believe, aren't you going to put your money where your mouth and heart are? Okay. That's where it should go. Broadly, he teaches that in all contact of his subjects with earthly things, they must be dominated by a super-earthly consciousness. Men must deal with the wealth of the world, but if their consciousness is conditioned merely within that material wealth, they fail. If all their dealing with wealth is motivated by and conditioned within a spiritual conception, then they will have found the deepest secret of life and fulfilled the highest purpose of their master. Men must have food to eat, must have clothes to wear. But if they spend all their days thinking about what they shall eat or what they shall wear, they are not understanding or realizing the ethic of Jesus. In sum, not coveting, not fearing the future. You know, that wasn't from my favorite author. She didn't say that. It was just another person that had some spiritual insight. There is a very sad story about hoarding material wealth. Mrs. Bertha Adams was 71 years old when she died alone in West Palm Beach, Florida. On Easter Sunday in 1976, the coroner's report read, cause of death, malnutrition. She weighed 50 pounds. When the state authorities made their preliminary investigation of her home, they found a veritable pig pen, the biggest mess you can imagine. One seasoned inspector declared he had never seen a dwelling in greater disarray. She had begged food from her neighbors' doors and had gotten what clothes she had from the Salvation Army. From all appearances, a penniless recluse, pitiful and forgotten widow. But such was not the case. Amid the jumble of her filthy, disheveled belongings were found 2 keys to safe deposit boxes at 2 different local banks. The first box contained over 700 AT&T stock certificates, plus hundreds of other valuable notes, bonds, and solid financial certificates, not to mention cash of about $200,000. The other, just cash, $600,000. What a good life she could have had, but who knows why her mind went the way it did. She died of starvation. Her case was even more tragic if she was destitute spiritually. We don't know. Our consumer society is constantly telling us that life at its best consists of having more and more possessions and pleasures. As Christians, we know that this is false, but the tug is so strong. You know, people just have to have that little bit more money. I remember in college thinking, oh, these instructors, what's the matter with them? They make a lot of money. And they'd be talking about having, what do you call it? A beggar's stew party, where everybody, the story of the beggar who had, I'm contributing this, and everybody else can bring in more, and we'll all get together and have a great feast. Well, I thought these people should have money, but they didn't have what they thought was enough. The heart illness of greed takes on a macabre humor in the popular bumper sticker, which reads, "He who dies with the most toys wins." If you were to change one letter in there, I think we could agree with that sticker. If you said, "He who dies with the most joys wins." If you had the joy of helping someone else know Jesus, if you were joyful about what the Lord has given you, if you had the most joys, you would be a winner. Who died with the greatest joy from that standpoint? Jesus. When he endured everything, could see that. Matthew 6:19 is a play on words and is more literally translated, don't keep treasuring up treasures for yourself. In other words, don't keep making a big deal out of money and what it can do. Jesus is not advocating financial poverty as a means of attaining spirituality. You can't buy your way to heaven. Okay? The rich young ruler found that out. You can't buy your way to heaven. Money, which is otherwise neutral, can become your god or your idol. Christianity does not require a man to cast away or even give away what he has inherited or earned or come into. But it forbids him to find delight in treasuring up his wealth or looking to it as a source of either safety or happiness. Oh, I've got my gold. I got my stock certificates. I've got this and I've got that. What was the rich young ruler's problem? He was told to sell all his stuff. Why? Not that there was anything wrong with having it, but he trusted too much in it. He didn't trust enough in God. The irony of possessions is that instead of minimizing anxiety, the possessions became a source of anxiety, sometimes even great angst, since they are always vulnerable to the vagaries of decay and loss. Oh, my money. Oh, the government's going to get it. Well, of course it's going to get it. Get a government that's big enough, it's going to be big enough to take it away. What about the rich landowner in Jesus' time? Oh, I've got so much grain. All my silos are overflowing. I'm going to build more granaries. And the Lord told him what? You're going to die tonight. Who else is going to get it? When you die, who's going to get it? Have you ever seen a hearse pulling a U-Haul trailer? Doesn't happen. You can't take it with you. Sorry. Job understood these truths, and upon losing unspeakable wealth, he was the richest guy in the world. He lost all that and his children and declared, I didn't have anything when I came in, I won't have anything when I go out. James 5:3 tells us, your gold and silver have rusted, and their rust will be a witness against you. You ever seen gold or silver rust? Not physically. How can gold or silver rust economically? You're familiar with the story, legend of Rip Van Winkle, supposedly fell asleep, comes back and he's got this long beard and everything's changed and nobody's around. Well, there was a modern allegory of that, a story that somebody wrote about a guy who steals a lot of money, and they catch him and they throw him in jail, but they never could find the money, which was what he was counting on. And so the $5 million he stole, when he got out, he knew it was now, that money. He's been following the market. He knows that $5 million is now like $100 million. But he hasn't been paying attention to anything else. And when he gets out, he goes to his payphone. Surprisingly, still had payphones. This is pre-cell phones. Okay, he still had payphones there. Picks up the payphone, and the operator says, please deposit $500,000 for the first 3 minutes. Yeah. He didn't count on inflation, did he? That's the rust, one of the means of rust that we're talking about. Rust, the gold. Psalms 39:6 says, surely every man walks about as a phantom. Surely they make an uproar for nothing. He amasses riches and does not know who will gather them. All these people pile up money, and who's going to get it? Proverbs 14:11 says that household palaces of the wicked will be destroyed, but the tent of the righteous will flourish. Can you imagine the disaster coming where the mansions fall down and people are living in shacks are spared? Regardless. Why? Because of the integrity of the inhabitants. When the tempest comes and things get swept away, only the things of God are going to survive. You may say, I've never been robbed. I have the best burglar alarm system. That may be true, but if you thought about the explosive effects of inflation, oppressive taxation, bank failure, stock market crashes, expensive of prolonged illness, government that has programs that they want to fund, Guess what? You're not too safe, are you? Matthew Henry wrote that Jesus gives us a good caution against making the things that are seen, that are temporal, our best things, and placing our happiness in them. Lay not up for yourselves treasures upon earth. Christ's disciples had left all to follow him. Let them keep in the same good mind a treasure. It is the abundance of something that is in itself, at least in our own opinion, precious and valuable and likely to stand us in stead thereafter. But gold is scarce. I'm going to invest in gold. Yes, economists will tell you that. What is gold? It's a paving material. Right? You make it to heaven, you're going to walk on gold. It'll just look shinier the more you walk on it. We must not count these things the best things, nor the most valuable in themselves, nor the most serviceable to us. We must not call them glory, as Laban's sons did, but see and own that they have no glory in comparison with the glory that excelleth. Who was visiting Laban because he had a little argument with his brother? Esau got a little mad at him. Jacob. The cheater. He left his home because he had deceived his father into giving him the birthright, which he had extorted from his brother because his brother was hungry and, I'm going to die if I don't get some food, and, oh, here you go, I just want the blessing. Oh, I don't want that. But then he did want it, and then there was trouble. But here, Laban's sons loved money too, okay? And so they figured out, okay, we'll just give Jacob, a certain type of cattle. That doesn't happen very often, so we'll give him those cattle. And then the Lord blessed, and he started getting lots of cattle. Oh, no, we're going to change that around, and from now on, you're going to get such and such. And all of a sudden, he was getting that, and they were unhappy. We must not covet an abundance of things or still be grasping at more and more of them and adding to them as men do, which is their treasure, not knowing when we have enough. Money is like seawater. The more you drink, the more you want, and it kills you. How much is enough? We must not confide in them for futurity, to be our security and supply in time to come. We must not say to the gold, you're my hope. We must not content ourselves with those things as all we need or desire. We must be content with a little for our passage, but we have other things for consideration. We are not laying up for our posterity in this world. In other words, we're not saving up for our kids, for their way in this world, but for ourselves in the other world. My kids don't need my money. We need theirs. But we're not laying up for our kids, for their future. We're laying up treasures in heaven for ourselves. Choose wisely. We know that we're just so smart, aren't we? We can just figure out everything's going to happen in the world. We just know what's going to happen so we can invest wisely and move on from there. No. I mentioned before, I think, the guy who thought he saw all this trouble going to happen, World War II going to happen. He went off to a little island in the Pacific called Guadalcanal. Yeah, good thinking. Some suggestions. First, we are to reject extravagant living. Now, what's extravagant? You have to decide for yourself what's extravagant. It's not my business what your business is, how much money you spend on something. It's between you and the Lord. It has some bearing with where you live. We're all extravagant compared to some people in the world. We're all poor compared to some other people in the world. We are not to ignore the needy. We're to look to share wealth with our less fortunate friends. And then we're not to live as if this was the only world. This is just a bus stop on the way to eternity. You may indeed amass a fortune, but you won't be able to keep it, or your descendants will waste, or the government will find a way to take it away. What you have may last for a few years or a generation or two, but eventually the money you work so hard for will slip from your hands. Solomon says, riches do not profit in the day of wrath, but righteousness delivers from death. Proverbs 11:4. 15% of everything Christ said relates to this topic, more than his teachings on heaven and hell combined. Was it because Jesus valued money? No, but he knew what people valued. So that's why he left them. He asked this question: what does it profit a man to gain the whole world and forfeit his soul? Mark 8:36. All treasures are to be held in subjection to God and used as he directs. He who is in touch with eternal realities can well afford to hold earthly possessions with a loose hand. Worldly wealth passes away and leaves him who has nothing else poor indeed. Question. You take out a coin and you look at it. There's two schools of thought. One says it's flat, so you can what? Keep it. Another says it's round to roll away, right? Be spent, used. Okay? I'm not here to tell you how to use your money, but I'm here to tell you that God is there to tell you how to use your money. The money that he gave you. The more we distribute for the blessings of others as guided by the Lord, the more wealth we lay up in heaven. Heaven is the only bank that is eternally insured. Okay? So what you lay up treasures in heaven, it's got eternal assurance. Now, question I ask you about treasures. Do you have a treasure? Trick question. Yes, you all have a treasure. Whether it is good or evil is the question, but you all have a treasure. Because what you do can be a treasure for others, but more importantly, all of you should have a treasure. 2 Corinthians 4:7 tells us what? 2 Corinthians 4:7. I'd like to have somebody read that, okay? Any volunteers to read that?
But we have this treasure in jars of clay to show that this all-surpassing power is from God and not from us.
Okay. We have this treasure in clay or earthen vessels. What treasure is that? Okay, there's a treasure map to that in Colossians 1:27. Colossians 1:27. Okay.
To them God has chosen to make known among the Gentiles the
Christ in you, the hope of glory. Can there be a more valuable tool than that? A more valuable asset than that? Be sure, if you are able to be here Thursday night to have the evangelist speak to you about how to deal with people who are visiting. If you are not here for that, then find out before you run off and say too much or too little to someone. But basically, we need people at this evangelism and out in the neighborhood who are to be friends to those around us. We don't need to shove doctrine down their throat. We can share sympathy. There's a lady at work whose husband has got to have an operation to relieve the pressure in his head. It's enough for us to be sympathetic ears to listen to what these people's problems are, to share their joys as well as their sorrows. But Christ in you, the hope of glory, is the treasure, is the map to success. Our closing hymn is number 494.